Copilot for financial services. Let's dive right in. The agenda for today is really pretty simple. Going to be doing a lot of demos, kind of showing you some things live. So really not a lot of slides today. Not going to be like explaining what Copilot is or going through features. Although small group, we can cover some of that if we want to. But we'll just tell you a little bit about myself and then kind of like the journey to get to where we're at today. And then I'm going to dive right into demos. That sound good? Cool. So I have to give a shout out to all of our sponsors for coming to be next. It wouldn't be possible without all of our fantastic sponsors. So, if you haven't taken a chance to go walk through the expo hall, take a visit. And, big thanks to all of our sponsors for today. So just real quick about me. This is the bio. I live here in Denver. So I've been coming to CompSunex for quite a few years. I'm a Copilot TS in financial services. So I cover, I'm specifically in banking. So I spend most of my time, I cover all of modern work from a pre-sales perspective. I spend most of my time over the past 18 months since Copilot was released talking about Copilot. So yeah, that's pretty much me. Let's take a quick trip into a time capsule for a minute. I joined Microsoft 24 hours before Copilot went GA. So before I get into the demos, I wanted to just kind of storytell a little bit about the Copilot time capsule because it's evolving so rapidly. So you might be wondering why I have some AI generated images of a really nice living room here. But I actually wanted to illustrate it with a point. So most of Microsoft's products have a pretty defined feature set, right? Outlook does email, Teams does chat, collaboration, and meetings. Copilot is a lot different. Sure, it has a set of features, but the way a customer uses it from one customer to the other is completely different, and it varies widely based on their workflow, right? So when I first joined Microsoft, Copilot went GA, I think November 1st, 2023. The demo guidance at that time was, let's show Copilot in our products, right? Show how Copilot works in Teams, Copilot in Outlook, Copilot in Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And I'd say that went on for probably 3 months. There was some initial interest from customers about, hey, what is Copilot? What can we do with it, in all of our products? And this started to become painfully clear to me. Customers just weren't connecting the dots. Like summarizing an email in Outlook is nice, but it's kind of like, a party trick. The real question was like, okay, so how does this help my business? If I said, Copilot can do these things in Outlook and Teams, and, that's great, but customers really weren't connecting the dots. They just weren't seeing it. And the way I think about it is like a real estate agent, taking you to show you a really beautiful house and there's no furniture in it, right? So it's, you can see here, it's a really nice, big, beautiful house. And we can't imagine ourselves living there. There's no furniture in it. We can't really, see the layout of how we would use the house, so to speak, right? And so, it's kind of like window shopping, and a lot of customers weren't really connecting the dots. Somewhere around 6 months after launch, I'd say maybe in April 2024, I started to realize, like, we really need to stage the house with furniture, right? So in terms of Copilot, this meant building demos that were really relevant to the functions and roles that we were speaking to. And in my world, that's investment bankers, commercial bankers, payments groups, investor relations teams, wealth managers. The list goes on and on. But there's only one problem. I'm not any of those. And I don't understand what an investment banker does, much less a commercial banker or a CFO, right? And so, it's really a challenge, honestly, to come up with use cases, right? Because as a Microsoft employee, I understand the product, but I have no idea what its roles and functions would do in there to your day to day. So, what we started to see 6 months in is, we'd start to stage the house and I'd take customers on a tour, to try and, stage the house, so to speak, with some furniture, right? And they'd start to say, I could see how this might be used, in another customer's environment, but that's not how we work, right? So it's kind of like a real estate agent taking you into a house with like super modern furniture, right? And they're like, oh, like that's kind of cool. We can maybe see ourselves here, but that's not really our vibe. We're more of like a 70s retro, vibe, and that's the kind of house we want to see. So that's when it really changed 6 months in, and I started to hone in on an industry first approach. So I did a ton of research, met with customers ahead of time to find out what a typical day looks like, what their pain points were, what data sources they were using. And instead of trying to stage, the house, so to speak, with my furniture, tried to really focus more on how they would use it, right? And got a clear picture of what their needs might be like. So again, maybe I was thinking modern, but they were thinking retro. And then in my world, we had the benefit of, we have an industry team. It's a group of former bankers and wealth managers and things like that work for Microsoft. And they were really helpful in bringing to light what it would look like for an investment banker or commercial banker. And they would tell me like, no, that's a good thought. Like, nice try, Nate, but that's not going to work. Like, we need to move this direction and try these things. So, with the help of the industry team and frankly, customers who were pretty forthcoming with, what they were working on every day, came up with some really specific industry use cases. So, and this highlights a major challenge for Copilot and frankly any AI tool, is that showing AI and Copilot by itself is no different than telling customers in the 90s that, hey, there's some really cool thing called internet and you should use it, right? Without really understanding like how they would commercialize it or use it or build it into their business. It goes to kind of just like something cool, like, hey, my dial-up modem's faster than yours, right? And until it really became like an aha moment of like, this is how we can use it in our business. So I feel like that's where we're at right now. It's like, customers are still kind of looking at it, not fully understanding and how they would use it in their workflow. We're getting there pretty quickly. It's only been 18 months and it's changed pretty fast. So again, thank you for joining today. What I'll not be doing is walking you through an empty house, showing you a bunch of Copilot features. I'll be sharing with you some real examples that have resonated with customers over the past year. And for some context, I typically have 2 to 4 customer calls a day. So if you think, multiply that by 18 months or so since Copilot went GA, I like to think I have a good sense of like what's relevant. So I do have a lot of ground to cover, but I kind of want to just get a quick sense for who's here. Like, how many people have access to Copilot right now? Okay, so quite a few. And then are you, for those of you who are here, do you define yourself as a partner or a customer? Partner, raise your hand. Okay, cool. Any like end customers here? Okay, cool. All right. So I'll try and, hone this a little bit for partners and customers. So as if you're here with a partner and you're talking about Copilot with customers, I would encourage you to, maybe take some pages out of the book today. Not easy, but to get away from talking about Copilot features to Copilot workflows. And frankly, it's pretty hard to do even at Microsoft. I don't necessarily see everybody do it. And the idea is to just, open up the textbook and go through the laundry list of Copilot features. So hopefully, what a little bit of what I'm going to show you today will resonate. So let's get into some demos. And then if we get through all those, I do have a demo environment so we can have some fun and try some things. All right. The first thing I want to do, I said I wouldn't show you, Copilot in products, but I'm going to switch to Excel for just a minute, mainly because I think this is important for, let me change my display settings here. I think this is important for pretty much any role in finance, to see some of the capabilities in Excel. Excuse me. I think that it's just perfect. How many of you played with Copilot in Excel so far? A little bit? Okay. How many of you are like super Excel users? Okay, cool. All right, then you're probably going to school me on this, but I'm going to walk through. I have a demo workbook in Excel, and I think it's helpful just to see a little bit about like where and how Copilot can help in like your day-to-day functions in Excel, and some stuff actually that just came out recently from Microsoft Finance that I think is super useful with Copilot in Excel too. So in this workbook, we have a couple different examples. Really, where Copilot comes in handy in Excel is helping you come up with formulas, right? So if you have data in Excel and you're not sure like how to write a formula to do it, Copilot is really great at helping you come up with those ideas. So let's walk through a couple of examples. Let me go through, grab this. So in this first example, you can imagine you have a workbook with a bunch of customer names, right? And you need to separate the first and last name out of an email address. But just a simple prompt in Copilot, you can come up and say, hey, separate the email address into 2 columns for first and last name. And we'll see how the Wi-Fi is good today. This is a live prompt. So Copilot's going to understand the data. I didn't have to tell it like, hey, these are email addresses. They're separated by a dot or a comma. Copilot does do much better when there's dedicated columns. So I will say that I've seen you try and take like a full financial statement. Copilot, at least today, is super great at understanding Excel data where there's not dedicated column headers, right? But, with just a quick prompt, rather than having to figure out a formula to do this, Copilot understands the data. And if I like the result, it even tells me like, how it created the formula. So from like a simple everyday user perspective, how to write formulas can be super helpful in Excel. So we can just insert this, and without having to write a formula, I just ask Copilot like, hey, I need to separate these into first and last name. Can you help me do that? So big time saving there. The next thing we can do is that we have some unstructured, data. Maybe it's been spit out from a survey tool or something like that. And we need Copilot to extract text out of that. So in this example, we can say, extract the text out of the second set of brackets in this spreadsheet, right? So you can see here, this is like a list of college classes, and it gives you like, the name, the date, and it looks like this came maybe it's like a SQL query that came out of SQL Server or something like that. So instead of having to try and figure out, you can imagine the time it would take to try and like extract the text out of all of this. I would have no idea how to write a formula to do that. Copilot understands the data, and it can also write formulas very well. So with just a simple prompt, it wrote a formula that I would never be able to come up with to pull the day of the week out of this unstructured data. So pretty simple, but some of the best prompts are the simplest ones, right? Where if you have unstructured data in an Excel table, just ask Copilot, tell it what you want it to do, and it can extract text out of unstructured data. Another good example is when you have data that's not formatted in the same way. So in this example here, we have a date, a bunch of locations, but you'll notice the locations are not consistent, right? Like sometimes we have city and then country, sometimes we have city and then state. So it's not, all of the data isn't formatted the same, right? Copilot can understand that data and help tidy things up for us. So let's grab the next prompt. And this one, you can say, I'm super pleased with network connected Copilot. Maybe I should not. Yeah. So we're going to say add a new column that pulls the country out of location. And then we give them Copilot just a little bit of info here. Like, most of the time the country is the value after the last comma, but not always. So like make it work basically. Copilot comes through the data and understands the data and can easily pull unstructured data into, just a country column. So just in your day-to-day work, I think the message here is if you don't know how to do something, or you have a spreadsheet that is not formatted the way you want, just try it out with Copilot. Say like, here's what I need you to do. Like shoot for the moon, and then chances are Copilot can probably understands data, and, it has like a vast encyclopedia of all the formulas. So it's like that, my wife works in finance. So, you used to walk down the hall and like, Terry and I used to work together. So it's like, hey, Terry, how do I write a PowerShell script to do this? Well, now I can just do that right here, right? Which is pretty cool. Another good example is XLOOKUP. So delete this. So an XLOOKUP is where you make a calculation looking, referencing two different parts of the spreadsheet. So in this case, we have a bunch of dates, countries, tickets sold, how much revenue. So I don't know, maybe this is the ticket sales for Pearl Jam or something like that. And we need Copilot to do an XLOOKUP to run a revenue calculation, let's say like by country, right? So we'll take this prompt and say, add a column that shows, we're going to say add a column that shows the revenue in US dollars. And so that's what I forgot to mention. So all of these ticket sales are shown in different countries' currencies, right? And so I want Copilot to do the calculation to convert it all into US dollar currency, right? So I'm going to send that off and ask Copilot to calculate all of the revenues in US dollars, because all of this, the ticket sales are listed for each country. And so what Copilot is doing here, it's asking it to integrate it into the column, but it didn't. That's okay. So we'll copy this formula. We'll go into the next section here. I copy it back. You got the lead fix. Okay. Maybe the demo gods aren't with me today. What should happen is Copilot will look up the exchange rates. Should look up the exchange rates for all of these countries and automatically convert it. Let's see. If not, we'll do that. But I think you get the idea. If you want to do an XLOOKUP where you need to convert data from one format to another, Copilot should look up the currency exchange rate and convert it. If it's not working, we'll just move on. Yep. I think you get the idea. You can play with XLOOKUP is really the message here. You need to look up data on your sheet, reference another formula, and convert it. You Copilot help you do that with XLOOKUP. A couple of other ones here. The charts. In this charts column, you can say create a chart, create a simple chart, show video games versus laundry, right? So what percentage of the time I play video games versus do laundry. Copilot can help you create some simple charts. I'll get into this in a minute. We'll open an actual financial statement from a publicly traded company, and we'll kind of do the same thing here, except with instead of formulas, we'll look at. I'll show you some examples of using Copilot in Excel to write macros. Pretty cool. So Copilot, for creating simple charts, rather than taking the time to say, insert chart, do this, you can just ask Copilot in natural language to create simple charts. So if you're exporting data, out of, Microsoft Admin Center or Teams Admin Center, and you need to create a quick chart. I remember I used to, when I was a Teams admin with several different companies, it would be like every month we would need to show a report for various aspects of Teams. If I had this at that time, just download the data and ask Copilot to create a chart. You have something you could probably throw in, not a board or director deck, but it would probably be for your manager, right? A couple of other ones that I think are pretty cool. This one actually, I'm going to run this one and have a story behind this one. So summarize verbatims. So imagine this is the output of a survey tool, right? And it just has all the verbatim comments. than from a survey tool, and they're not organized, right? Copilot's really good at understanding data in words and grouping it into theme context. So if you have the output of customer surveys, on your website, or actually did a demo with one of our customers where we mocked up the output of an Exchange server log file. So we created a scenario where there was a P1 outage, it was an Exchange outage, right? And the whole story behind it was, how Copilot helped accelerate mean time to recovery. And as a part of the demo, there was a section where it was like, okay, well, here's all the Exchange log files, and the engineer used Copilot to comb through the output of all the log files from an Exchange server and say, like, hey, what's the most common error here, right? And Copilot very quickly combed through all of it and was like, well, it's obvious there's a certificate issue. That's there's error after error of certificate issue. Rather than having to read through the logs, Copilot can help you quickly do that. So let's do that. Okay. We're going to say, summarize the verbatims to show the top three opportunities for improvement. So if you have a customer satisfaction survey or just, a bunch of data in Excel and you want to look at themes in that, Copilot can quickly read through all of that, okay, give you some of the top themes. It's especially useful if you're heading into like a management report, or you have a meeting where you need to summarize like a customer survey or something like that. You need to get a quick summary from Copilot. You can see here, it created like 3 macro teams for a bunch of survey data that was previously unstructured. So previously maybe I would have to like find certain words or read through it and try and make sense of it. Copilot is really good at doing that. I have another demo in a minute where we'll do this with actual 10K, like we'll compare to. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So I think if you wanted to use Copilot to look at the sentiment here, the same thing applies in Teams meeting. It's not listening to, the tone of the conversation. It's literally just looking at the word. The team that's just looking at the words of the transcript. So it's not going to understand how loud Terry talks or how loud Nate talks, or how animated I am. It's literally just looking at the words to infer sentiment. So yeah, the same is true here. That answer the question? Yeah, I think as far as I know, it's just a team. So I might have to come back on that. So let's kind of conclude just the general Excel section here. The message is, use Copilot to help you write formulas in Excel. If you have a bunch of data and you're not sure what to do with it, crack open Excel and say, like, here, this is what I'm trying to do. Help me out. And if it fails the first time, try the prompt a different way. But from like a time saving standpoint, it can be really helpful inside Excel. Let's do something different here. I'm going to close this and I'm going to open financial statement from Walmart. Okay. So this is the real deal, right? This is from the SEC. Wait for this to load here. Okay. So this is from the SEC. This is a comprehensive financial statement, right? I have no idea what to do with this. I don't do financial reporting every day, but what I'm going to show you here is, I think, super helpful with Copilot. So let's just pick one of these. We'll look at. Actually, no. Let's just shoot for the moon here. So in this instance of Excel, I've turned on the developer tab. So you have to go do this, right? Like Excel doesn't just pop open the developer tab, and you may have restrictions that don't allow you to do that. But you have to have the developer tab with Visual Basic and macros enabled to do this, right? And actually got this idea from, we had an internal webcast with some of the Microsoft Finance folks, and they went through a scenario of how they automate their close process every month. And I thought this was super helpful. So what I'm going to show you here, don't pay attention to the prompts because I'm not a finance guy, but what you can do with Copilot, remember Copilot understands language, but it also understands pretty much every type of code. So you can come to Copilot and you can say, let's try this, write a VB script to extract data from consolidated income sheet and forecast income for the next 3 months based on publicly available data. This might be a super silly prompt, but you can see. So if you were in finance, you would probably have a better idea of what you wanted to do with this. I'm working through one right now where going through, we have a customer who said, hey, can Copilot help us create a discounted cash flow analysis? And we're working through what that would look like. So you can see here, what I wanted to show you is not necessarily the value of my prompts, because I'm not a finance person. I don't know what you would need to do with consolidated income statement. But what I wanted to show you here is this VB script, right? And to be honest with you, I have never run VB scripts in Excel. I've never tried to write one, nor would I try. But with Copilot, I can just tell it in natural language what I want to do. And then we can come to virtual VB here. And then we go to our income statement. Hold on. Sheet wrong. Consolidated statement. All right. So let's go back to Visual Basic. Go into consolidated statements of income. I'm going to say insert a new module. We can paste the VB script right here, right? Close that. And now when we go back to Excel, we go to our macros. You can see there's a VB script to forecast income. Let me run that. And apparently this VB script wasn't written correctly. I'm not gonna trouble too much on that, but the message here, I'm not gonna deep dive and try and get this right. But the point is, writing VB scripts in Excel or macros. If you don't know how to do that, Excel can help you write those. So whatever data you're working with every day, I've worked with quite a few like wealth managers and investment groups who are very keen on their macros and things they've written. Copilot can be a big help. If you are familiar with macro scripts and VB, Copilot, think of it like GitHub Copilot, right? Where developers are using GitHub Copilot to help them write code faster and more accurate in less time. So if you're the type of person who uses Excel and you're using macros, pop open Excel and ask you, if you have an existing script that you're having trouble with or want to write a new one, crack open Copilot and say, help me write a script to do this. Cool. All right. So let's wrap that section up in Excel. Any other questions? I think the main thing I wanted to point there is if you're heavy users of Excel, Copilot can definitely help you with scripting and formulas. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. So, remember the Copilot in each, and this is maybe a little bit of how we make the sausage, but the Copilot chat in Excel, its primary function is to understand and help you in Excel, right? The Copilot chat pane can have access to the web if you've enabled it, because technically speaking, this is Copilot chat. So what you do in Copilot chat here in Excel, I can read over. So what you can do in Copilot chat here in Excel, should be the same thing you can do in Copilot chat in PowerPoint or Copilot in a browser, right? But the little bit of like maybe insider information is every Copilot chat and each product has a little bit different of an orchestration to it. It all leverages the same Copilot engine, but the way the Excel group writes the Copilot orchestrator, either their product versus how the PowerPoint group writes it, will be just a little bit different. And that was kind of an aha moment for me, that like, why am I not getting the same results in Copilot chat that I am in Copilot Excel? Well, it's because the orchestrator is a little bit different in each product. So, assuming that web search is turned on in Copilot chat at your company, it should be able to reach out to the internet and find that. But just keep in mind, there might be nuances to how Copilot chat works in each product. And that's like, if you're a partner who talks Copilot with customers, keep that in mind, because there's been quite a few times where, I bang my head up against the wall trying to get Copilot to do something in chat where I would like have a legal and compliance demo. I'll show you here in just a minute, where we went to Word and it was like, okay, why is this working so much better in Word? Well, it's because the orchestrator, the way it was built in Word, is actually a little bit different than the way it works in the browser, right? So, and eventually I think that will converge. But right now, there are some subtleties. Yeah, good question. Thanks, Ron. Good to see it too, by the way. All right, so let's keep going here. I'm going to pull up my next use case. Let me just get the slideshow here. And go here. Oh, it's okay, cool. All right. So the next biggest one that I've spent the majority of my time over the last year is Copilot for investment banking. Our industry group did some research with interviewing a bunch of bankers, and like they did this Gartner quadrant where it was like, hey, what can we get out of the box where there's a lot of value and it's easy to build versus what's going to be hard to build, right? So creating a custom LLM using Azure OpenAI that like there was one customer I talked with where they were trying to do credit spreading, but if you don't know what credit spreading is, basically like taking a financial statement, pulling all the numbers out of it into their own format and using it to create credit ratings. So they wanted to know if Copilot could do that. And ultimately the answer was like, no, out of the box, Copilot's not going to do something that well orchestrated and complex. So a lot of questions that I got were over the past year were like, what can we do like now, like quickly out of the box, right? So investment banking was definitely one of those. So let me just flip through. Like, had some of these demos ready, and just in case the network was bad here.
Okay, in this demo, I'm going to
let me turn that off. But guys, go the audio. So in this first demo, I'm going to walk you through an investment banking use case scenario. So we're here in Copilot chat. We're in the work tab, and you could be in, it doesn't really matter, but we're in Copilot chat. We have a SharePoint site that has a knowledge base, and we have some equity research documents, right? So today we're covering Tesla, and we have a couple of research reports from Bernstein and Morgan Stanley. And we'll open these up here, take a look at what they look like. A bunch of investment bankers commonly look at these research reports that come in. So we have a Morgan Stanley perspective on Tesla, right? And this document, I think, is about 20 pages. We also have a Bernstein report that has a perspective on Tesla. Investment bankers spend a ton of time looking through these reports and coming up with themes and analysis. And if you've seen any of the news, investment bankers put in a lot of time. I think there was an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day where there was like an investment banker who like struggled with major addiction, like kind of keep up with the work. So Copilot can help you quickly come up with themes and analysis when looking at like different research reports. Might be simple, but we can put in just a beginning prompt here, and we'll kind of let Copilot know what we're doing. So if you've heard anything about prompting, it's like, the context is important. So you need to tell Copilot, who you are, what you're trying to achieve, who the audience is. So the first prompt I'm going to put in here is, I'll tell Copilot that I'm preparing 2 equity reports, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions about those. And after each one of those, you should ask me what you should do next. By the way, your audience is investment bankers, so pay special attention to like numbers, percentages, and analytics. Copilot says, cool, let's go. I'm ready to assist you. What's your first question? So now, of course, I have to reference those documents. Because I'm in the work context, Copilot has access to everything I have access to. I just showed you a minute ago of how those were, the equity research reports were on a SharePoint site. I can type the / and Copilot will pull up a list of my like recently accessed documents. You could browse and find these as well. And then I'm going to put in, just a rapid fire series of questions. So these are like 5 questions that an investment banker, might have. We're going to ask about revenue projections. You don't have to read all of this. It's basically like revenue projections, profit margins, market share, competitive landscape. So, basically think of a junior investment banker like, hey, go answer all these questions from these 2 research reports about Tesla, right? Copilot will look through both of the research reports and quickly come back with some themes and analysis, right? So a lot of value here. This is probably taking me a lot of time to like read through and write this up myself. I'm still probably going to edit it and vet it and check it. We want to keep a human in the loop. But for an investment banker who puts in 60, 80 hours a week looking at stuff, coming up with common themes research is really helpful. And if this seems like kind of child's play to you, I'll tell you this definitely resonates with investment bankers. Like just simple things like this, time saving, looking at themes and analysis is huge. So you can see your Copilot is, it's providing differences from the 2 documents. And at a high level, Morgan Stanley is more bullish than Bernstein. Like pretty much across the board, Morgan Stanley is more bullish on Tesla than Bernstein in pretty much every category. So competitive landscape, market share, revenue projections, kind of across the board. Next prompt, we'll continue with the same thing, but we're just asking the next series of questions. So the main point here is that you don't have to feel like you just have one prompt to do everything you need to do. You can have an iterative conversation about it, right? So if I have a next series of questions that I want to ask about these research reports, we can continue, right? So if there's like a set of 20 questions that investment bankers always ask about equities they cover, and I'll show you in a minute here, we'll build a feed that does this. But you can have a conversation. Or if Copilot didn't give you what you want the first time, you can just say, well, really, like all I wanted to know about Tesla is Elon Musk is going to be president. You can continue your joke. I probably should have said that on tape, but it's a conversation. And then from here, we'll keep going. Gets through. It's going to come through, talk about risks and opportunities, strategic initiatives, financial health. Again, I'm not an investment banker. These might not be the right questions, but if you were an investment banker, you would know exactly the types of questions you want to ask, and you can create your prompt to like very quickly compare equity research documents. And then I think the last thing we're going to show here, let me see if I can click forward a little bit. Yep. So the question is, okay, well, like, what about all the charts and graphs of these reports? Like, does Copilot understand those? And as long as there is text in those, so in this case, we're going to ask Copilot to pause it here. I'll show you the prompts. Let's go. So in this case, we want to ask Copilot, hey, what's the bull, base, and bear case for these equities? Like every research report, has kind of like a high, medium, low projection for the stocks that they cover. What are the best, mid and worst case projections for Tesla as an equity? As long as there's text, at least today, as long as there's text associated with the graph, so you can see here, there's a risk reward chart and probabilities of each price target. So it's basically saying like, what do we think the Tesla stock's going to be worth, in the next coming months? And it gives like a probability for the high, medium, and low targets. As long as there's numbers in the chart, Copilot will definitely comb through those and provide a response. This came directly from like a question from one of our customers, like, what about the charts and the graphs? Another thing that's really cool about this if we go back to that chart for just a minute, is typically like down here, you can see there's kind of just a, brain dump of like how the assumptions they made. Investment bankers, they pay special attention to like the assumptions they make to like get the calculations. So for each one of these like forecasts, there's a bunch of assumptions down below, but they're not organized in any fashion. So it's almost like different groups from this equity research firm did the analysis. Copilot can organize those for you. So even though in the report itself, like all the different metrics they look at are all over the place, you can ask Copilot to look through those and say, hey, basically organize all of this so that I can compare apples for apples in each one of these, right? Copilot will comb through that, and I've asked it to create a table to kind of line all the metrics up. And give it a minute here, and I'll pause. It's pretty small on screen, so I'll explain what this is. So basically, it created a table to line up like the EBITDA multiples and forecasts for like Tesla's core auto business. How many units do we expect Tesla to sell in their core auto business for each target use case, right? It was all included in those paragraphs down below, but it wasn't organized at all. Copilot reasoned through all of that. It understood it, and it lined up the categories. So now I have a nice table where I can actually compare like the different business segments from Tesla to make sense of it, right? So Tesla's energy line of business, right? What do we expect their stock price to be, or what portion of the business do we expect their energy? Copilot helped organize all of that. So this wraps up the demo for investment banking. But the key message here, like in research, of course, Copilot can be really helpful out of the box, just organizing it. But yeah. Yep. Yeah. 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 Good question. And I'll repeat it for the recording. So the question is like with Microsoft's research agent and analyst agent that are in preview right now, do we expect the responses to be richer, deeper than the Copilot chat? Yes, absolutely. I have a use case with a customer right now. We're working on, I mentioned earlier, like, create a discounted cash flow forecast based on the financials, right? But the analyst agent, we have access to it in preview with Microsoft, will iterate through all of the steps that would be needed to create a discounted cash flow. Because with Copilot, just M365 Copilot, you might have a general sense of what a discounted cash flow model is, right? Like there was maybe an article that it was trained on that says, okay, here's what a discounted cash flow model is, and it can spit out like maybe a paragraph about, with a few numbers about a discounted cash flow model. The analyst agent can iterate much deeper into what that looks like, and it's going to walk through like the assumptions that were made. And actually, I was just playing with this yesterday because I just installed the agent and customer meeting at the end of this month, and results are definitely deeper and richer. I think the industry team I work with is very key on making sure the numbers are accurate, right? Which I definitely appreciate their help on. The long answer to the short question is yeah, absolutely. When you're looking at like deep reasoning, things like that, it's going to be much better. And I remember when Copilot first came out in Bing, we had this like slider that you could say like more creative, more balanced, more precise. That went away. And I think this will be helpful because sometimes, like if you just want to know the best way to chop garlic, okay, well, you don't need to invoke like a deep reasoning model that's using like really expensive LLMs if they become available, right? Like you just need a simple answer. But if you're doing something complex, you might need to turn the dial up, right? Which is like where the analysts and research agents come. So yeah, good question. Yeah. Good question. It's increasing all the time. I think last time I checked, it was like five meg, something like that. But it also, it varied because remember, when like any LLM breaks everything down into tokens. So it depends on like how many get, right? And what you'll find with Copilot Chat versus, I mentioned this earlier before I only came in, but the nuances of Copilot in each product will be a little bit different because the orchestration, like the Word or Excel, is a little bit different. But that's always increasing. And if you use like the upcoming analyst or research agent preview, like those limits are getting to increase even with every new model that comes out. It's going to be ever. You'll see the results start to trim. Like you'll be like, hey, why did it only show me results from like the first? Correct. Yeah, and that's actually a good segue. I think my next demo, it's kind of you just played. Yeah, this is going to autoplay. So this is a similar demo. I'm just going to let this run because some of this is repetitive. So similar concept, except instead of like 20-page, equity analyst reports, this one's actually looking at the 10K annual statements from Tesla and Rivian, which are like well over 100 pages long. And so, so we have a Tesla and Rivian 10K here. Let me make sure this is the right demo. Nope, that's the same one. All right. Okay, here we go. This is it. Cool. All right. Make sure the audio's on this. So in this case, this document is 130 pages long. And I'll be honest with you, when I came up with this and started demoing it to customers, it took a little while with the prompting to get it right. So with a 130-page document, where your PDFs are really long, these are verbatim the PDFs from the FTC website for Tesla and Rivian. The way you prompt can be super helpful because in your prompt you can tell it to focus on just particular areas of it. So you'll see here my first prompt, which is super difficult to see. I apologize. This is kind of just our first initial prompt. Just saying, hey, I need your help doing some research. I'm comparing two annual reports. Here's the first question. I'm looking to compare and summarize the management's discussion and analysis section of each document. So even though the 10Ks are 130 pages long, in my prompt I said, hey, Copilot, just focus on this section. So in your prompt, be specific is super helpful. Instead of just saying like, hey, summarize these two 10K documents. Copilot's not going to understand like what you're trying to accomplish there. But if you're like, hey, I'm trying to compare highlights and themes from the management's discussion and analysis, which is particularly where the executives like talk through the business and make comparisons. Now Copilot, just with my prompts, understood like, hey, I don't need to read through this whole document. Let me clue in on the management discussion and analysis section of these two 10Ks. You can see here it summarizes both Tesla and Rivian. And then if I wanted to, I don't think I do it here in this prompt. You could say, hey, build that into a table with common themes. And we'll let this run here. So the next thing is I'm asking Copilot to compare annual growth prospects. So again, I'm not just saying, hey, summarize these documents, but like I'm being pretty specific about like create a table to summarize growth prospects. So it's going to use that concept and focus on revenue growth, production capacity, product line. So with just the prompt, we're kind of dialing in, what Copilot can do. Good question. That's a great question. So the question is like, does Copilot give you references for exactly where in the document it found that information? Currently in chat, no. And I haven't seen any roadmap, but in just a minute, we'll go over in Word. Word actually does give you references in the document. I have a legal use case. Sure, you can. Second. So yeah. And then also, I'm going to share with you that going back 6 months, when I would run these prompts, after I ran through a few of these, I would see that you would start to hit like a buffer window and where it would start to trim the results from the document. And with each big release that comes out, Copilot, that context window keeps getting bigger and bigger to where you can keep the conversation going. Because remember, all of this is in the context window right now. Everything that we've seen, all of this analysis is in the context window, and that I've seen that actually improve over the last 12 months. And I would say every 6 months, expect to see that increase, especially if you like the analyst agent. This last prompt is create a table to evaluate the risks of each company and group them into similar topics. So, if I'm in equity research analysis or anything like that, it's coming through both of those 10Ks. It's looking at the risk section, and it's creating a table where I can easily look at like, hey, what financial risks did each company talk about? What cybersecurity risks did they talk about? So getting up to speed quickly with 10Ks, you imagine how much time it would take, like looking at these side by side, equity analysts, research analysts, it would take them a lot of time. Copilot can really give a leg up on summarizing. So does that kind of help answer the question about the long documents? Cool. All right. So let's move on. Gee, we're almost at time. Dang. Let's keep going here. Let me see what I have left. And you guys, maybe we can kind of choose where we go. The next demo I wanted to go over was kind of like a legal use case. Yeah. No, I took it off the screen just quickly. Yeah, let me go. I have a legal use case we can look at, or we can do, maybe let's take a look at the investor relations use case. Unless there's anywhere anybody wants to go. We got about 10 minutes left. So if there's anything burning in your mind, let me know. We can go there. Want to do the legal? Okay. I think this one's kind of cool because it takes place in Word. Let me run this. This one is actually pretty cool. So one of the challenges, you remember at the beginning of my presentation where I talked about staging the house, you can imagine customers' responses when they're like, hey, we would love to help you create a use case. Give us some data. Answer, no, absolutely not. So in this use case, my account team gave me some boilerplate Microsoft templates, and we did a use case with a legal compliance department, so a bunch of lawyers, corporate lawyers for a very big banking customer you probably see on every street corner. And we did this use case in Word because the results were actually deeper and richer. So the prompt, it's kind of hard to see here, but I'll tell you. So we're in Word, right? And we're in Copilot on the right. You'll notice the orchestration is a little bit different here. So I'm going to say in this customer agreement, a bank is defined as the customer and Microsoft as the service provider. Identify and outline in the table the potential risks of the bank if the agreement is executed as stated. So Copilot will comb through the entire document, and this document's about 10 pages long, and it gives us a nice table of the risks to us as a bank if this contract would be executed as planned. And if I do this in the demo, you'll see down below here these references. In Word, each one of these references will actually take you to the section of the document. That doesn't happen in Copilot Chat. So this goes back to the orchestration I was talking about. That's a little bit different. If you're in Word, you're probably better off if you're talking to a lawyer, looking at things in Word, because your prompt will actually present references and aid you through the document where it found that information. The next prompt here, what are the consequences of non-compliance and license terms of this document? So again, another simple question. Come through this and provide, some answers. And then I think where we go from here is in Outlook, right? We have an email that says, good morning, we need to draft a warranty section of the Microsoft MC as quickly as possible for Peter. He wants a summary and non-legalese so that they're just going to understand. So basically what we're saying is like, hey, an executive asks for a summary of this legal document that nobody understands. Can you help us draft like an executive summary for Peter, our CFO, right? So in Outlook, one thing that resonated with customers pretty well is creating a response to an email. You don't have to go out to Word to reference it. You can reference it directly in Outlook. So it's moving kind of quick here, but in Outlook, I asked Copilot, hey, go look at this document. Also look at this email and help us draft a response to Peter, our CFO, summarizing this section of the legal document. Huge time saver here for lawyers who get asked all the time, like, help me understand this in flexible language. That big complicated legal document that we have, right? Give me a write-up for our VP that they can understand. That's a big one. Another one we did here is similar. So we're still here in Word. Outline all the obligations from Microsoft in this document. It gives us a nice outline. Again, we can page through the document, and we can ask Copilot to rewrite it in a different code. So if we want to take different sections of the document, we can copy it here, and Copilot can help us draft. So lawyers helping draft in Outlook is a huge help. And you can also ask Copilot to help us clean up the syntax of this legal document, right? Where it might not be written as concisely as it should be. So if you have either a real estate agreement or any type of legal agreement, keep in mind and on all this stuff, so it can help you really clean all of that up. Yep. So we're over time here. I'm going to pause there. There are even more use cases to show you. I'm happy to sidebar with you, but I'll end there and see if you have any questions. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the keyword that comes to mind is automation. So, but the question is what level of automation, right? So a lot of it's pretty simple automation. And I don't cover our platform, Copilot Studio. I'm 100, 200 level. The first question is is this an automation that can be built with Power Automate, right? Just take Copilot out of the mix. Is this something we could do with Power Automate? Yes or no? If yes, then it could be something we can do with Power Automate. If it's a super complex scenario like credit spreading, where it's going to need to, take documents out of, let's say you need to take a bunch of numbers out of a 10K, put them in a certain format, and then use Copilot to reason with that and generate an output. Now we're getting into hey, we might need Dataverse to format the data in a certain way. And we probably need something built custom in Azure OpenAI to pull the data into this Dataverse table and then move it out. So it's simply a conversation about how much automation is going to be used, what's your vision for it. But I will say I spent a lot of my time kind of backing off expectations because everybody expects AI to just be able to do everything, right? And there's still some automation processes. So I would say probably 60 to 70% ends up falling into Copilot Studio, your automator, and then the other 30% into you're probably going to need. I know. That's my perspective. So, thanks everybody. I really appreciate you coming today.